Musa, you're welcome. Good evening. Please do indicate whether you've gone through the data set that I shared with you guys, please. All right, Flourish said yes, they went through the data. All right, please do go through the data set. And please do ensure that you guys are with your laptops because today's class is going to be hands-on. So we have to ensure that you guys are with your laptops. And if you don't have a laptop, you can just go ahead and follow along. Maybe after this session, you can go through the recorded session and follow along as well. But please, practice is key. Hello, Paul, you're welcome. Adele, you're welcome. Usman Sani, you're welcome as well. All right, so let's just dive into today's session. Just a minute, please. That's amazing. So you guys are welcome. Before we move on, let's go back and have a recap of what we did in our last session. That's always how I do my class. We go through what we did last before we move on. Please do Justice, do confirm if you can see my screen.
Yeah, very clear. And your voice is also loud.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So let me just go ahead and share my screen with you. Go through the. So let's just go through the slides. So in our previous class, we talked about data analysis, where we talked about data analysis, the process of examining data to find trends and answers to a specific, maybe business question, or just to make an informed decision. And what does it involve? It involves collecting data, organizing it, analyzing it, and finally being able to interpret it. And we went through the data analysis process where we talked about from collection to insights and communication. And we also talked about why data analysis is important in business, in healthcare, in sports, and many more. In business, it helps improve customer satisfaction, like optimizing marketing campaigns, and the overall goal, which is to increase revenue. And in healthcare, is to improve patient outcomes, maybe personalize a specific treatment plan based on patients' data, or identify disease outbreaks or predict disease outbreaks. And in sports, we talked about how we can analyze a player's performance to optimize training strategies and improve overall team performance. And we also talked about types of data. Structured data are just data that can be organized into rows and columns, like spreadsheets. And unstructured data are data that cannot be organized into rows and columns, like images, sounds, and the rest. So here we talked about this chart, with this illustration, which well describes structured and unstructured data, where we talked about structured data can be displayed in rows and columns, like relational database. It is quantitative, and 20% of enterprise data are structured, right? And then we also talked about uh, structured data to be numbers, dates, and strings. Strings are just sequence of characters, alphabets. And on the other hand, we have unstructured data, which cannot be displayed in a row and column. And they are quantitative they are qualitative, while structured are quantitative. And 80% of enterprise data is unstructured. For example, if you take a look at all the language models now, they are being trained on unstructured data. For example, images for image classification models, text and numbers for normal text generation models, and so on. Yeah. Then understanding datasets, we have roles, which we're going to be covering today in a practical way, represent individual entries, e.g., for example, a single customer or a single product, and columns represent characteristics or attributes like name. For example, you can have a column name with the rows of individual name. You can have a column of age with individual age or purchase history. And we have headers, which are just labels that describe the data. So we talked about tools where we have Python, which is a high-level programming language. We also have Google Docs, which is a spreadsheet tool by Google, Power BI, which is a visualization tool by Microsoft. We have another one, which is Microsoft Excel, which is a powerful data analysis and visualization tool. We also have Tableau, which is another amazing data visualization tool. And we also have R, which is a programming language for data manipulation as well. So in today's class, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be diving hands-on into practicals. We have a learning objective for today. So our today's learning objective, we are always going to be having learning objectives because it's always good to have a learning objective. We don't want to be doing random things. For example, our today's learning objective, by the end of today's session, learners should be able to do data cleaning and preparation. For example, data cleaning like handling missing values, using conditional formulas, for example, like if statements or averages. Learners can be able to split, format names correctly. For example, if you've gone through the data set that I provided earlier on, we have a student name that is not organized into first name and last name. So we're going to be performing some data transformation where we extract the first name and the last name while ignoring some of the middle names. And I'm going to be showing you guys how to standardize the data, for example, date or phone numbers, for them to be more consistent. So secondly, we're going to be performing data enrichment, which includes like how generating data set. For example, you can use formulas to generate data set. So we're going to be using a formula to perform a simple data generation, whereby we're going to be generating a student ID using formulas. And then we can assign performance remarks based on conditional logic, and then rank students and cells using the rank function. This doesn't only apply to students. You can use this knowledge and skills and apply it to any data set that you want. And then finally, we're going to be using like pivot tables to summarize students' performance and sales data. And we can also, finally, then we go ahead and perform some conditional formatting to highlight some performance levels. Don't worry, if you don't know all these terminologies, we're going to be covering them in depth. So finally, I'm going to be giving you guys a simple data set after today's session, whereby you're going to be calculating some KPIs, which is just a key performance indicator, where you compute the total revenue, the average discount, and most sold product in the data sets, and then maybe calculate average student score and ranking on your own, which we're going to be covering that today, but you're going to be doing it as a homework as well. So that will be it for today. If you're excited, that's amazing. So without any further delay, let's dive right into today's session, right? So data cleaning and data preparation. So before we dive into all these data cleaning and data preparation, I would like to take you guys on the tools we're going to be needing to do all that, right? So the tool we're going to be using is going to be Excel for the most part. And I've noticed that we have a lot of beginners in this hackathon. So it's going to be a beginner-centric approach to whatever that we're going to be doing today. So this is Microsoft Excel 2019. If you have a 2016, it's okay. If you have anything from 2016 and above, that will do. So first of all, I would like to take the absolute beginners on a journey. For example, if you come to the file section, which is the first tab in Excel, you have, we're going to be seeing some key things here. For example, if you go to, let's say you want to create a new file, an Excel sheet, then you can go to the new. Here, you have a blank workbook, right? And these are just templates organized by the Microsoft team to just give you some onboarding tutorials. So we also have open. Let's say you already have some data that you want to open. Maybe you have some data they've been working on and you want to open them. For example, as you can see, I have this student data which I opened on the 2nd of February 2025. So these are just data that I've been working on for this month. So I can just go ahead and select and open. I can as well browse my PC by clicking the browse button and then select a location of my data set, right? So for the sake of the absolute beginners, I'm going to be clicking on the new, then a blank workbook, right? So opening a blank workbook brings you to this Excel window. It's going to be a very overwhelming for beginners. I could remember the first time, many years ago, the first time I opened an Excel workbook, I was so confused. I didn't even know what it was. I was so confused. I was just seeing some boxes and I had no idea what to do. I know beginners are having the same feeling. Don't worry, it's easy, it's simple. There's no big deal once you get the hang of it. So, for example, if you open a blank workbook by default, it is not saved, right? It is not saved by default. So what you want to do is you want to go to this section and click this save icon, right? This icon, which saves the workbook, for example, clicking on it brings you to this window. You can save as, then select the location that you want to save. And then, for example, you can choose to save in downloads or documents, Telegram, whatever folder that you choose. So after saving your document, the next thing that you need to know, there's also a shortcut key. You can just press Ctrl+S, which does the same thing, which opens the backstage view where you can be able to save your document. Please, as soon as you begin, you open a new workbook, it's very key to just save it, right? And then the second important thing that I like to tell the absolute beginners is if you open an Excel, this blank document is called a workbook. For example, people are going to be saying, I have an Excel workbook or a worksheet. It can be called a workbook and a worksheet, right? So inside a workbook, there is an individual sheet. It's just like a book, right? With some sheets inside. So by default, there's a sheet. If you come to this part, you can see this sheet, right? This sheet. So this sheet, you can add another sheet to the workbook, right, by clicking the plus icon. So clicking on the plus icon adds another sheet. You can rename this sheet to whatever you want by double-clicking on it. Let's say data. I can name this sheet data. I'm pressing on Enter key, saves that name, and I can also double-click this sheet and then name it, maybe dashboard. Press Enter. You can have as many sheets as you want. And if you want to delete a sheet, just right-click on it and press on delete. Right-click, delete. So there's another thing that I want to show the absolute beginners. For example, a sheet contains cells, right? For example, in every Excel sheet, you can see a cell. For example, this is a cell, right? This is a cell, right? This is also a cell, right? So, and this is also a cell. So each and every cell has its own address. For example, this particular cell, its address is what? D4. For example, on the column, you can see it's D is highlighted, D is gray. And if you come to the row, you see 4. So the address to this cell is D4, right? D4. Likewise, if I go ahead and click on this, the address is what? B on the B column, and the fourth one. If I click on the one above, it's what? B, but row 3. Same thing applies to A, A1, A2, A3, and so on, right? So if you come to this input, you can see the cell address. For example, if I click on this cell, I can see that it's C2, right? This is definitely telling me that I'm actively in what? In cell C2. That's the address of the cell, right? You can as well come to the address bar and impute the address of any cell, and it's going to take you there. For example, I can say take me to D7. I press enter. As you can see, it automatically takes me to cell D7, right? So this is key for absolute beginners. You really need to know your cell addresses, which is going to help you while performing calculations. You need this address, right? For example, you can impute any values to this cell. For example, you can impute numbers, and pressing the enter key register that number and takes you to the next cell. And for example, let's say I can enter a string as well. For example, tomato. Pressing the tab key takes me to the next cell, and pressing the enter key brings me down to the active cell, right? Below the active cell. For example, I can go ahead and say apple. Pressing enter takes me below, right? So let's say you want to edit tomato. For example, you want to write tomatoes, not tomato. You can just click on it and start typing tomatoes, and pressing on enter, register that. As simple as that, right? So if you want to just delete, you can just click and then press delete on your keyboard, click, delete, click, delete, right? That deletes entries in your cells, right? The next thing that I want to talk about is, for example, you can, as you can see, the name of this plus sign, this selector, this plus sign, as you can see, I'm hovering it on my screen, is the plus sign, is called the selector. It can be used to select several rows and columns, right? For example, I can select from D to E. I can select from A1 to what? To E10, right? I can use it to select a single cell, and I can use it to select a range, right? For example, let's say I imputed 22 to this cell, right? And press my enter key. I can as well copy the value of one cell to the other. For example, if I want to copy the value of this cell to cell D1, I can just come to cell D1, press my equal sign, and then click on cell B2, right? And I can just go ahead and press enter. So if you see, the values in B1 and D1 are now identical. This is what makes Excel so powerful, right? You can copy the value of a cell to another. If that cell contains a formula, which we're going to be covering in a nutshell, it's going to copy the same formula to the corresponding cell, right? So the next thing that I want to talk about is there are many things to talk about here. Let's jump back to the ribbon. For example, if you come here, you can see the ribbon, right? This is called the ribbon, right? So in your ribbon, you have home. So if you take a look at this home, they are well organized. For example, this is your clipboard. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is your clipboard, right? And we also have what? We also have the font bar where you can be able to make your fonts bolder or italic or underline or change their colors and the rest. You also have the alignment, which helps you align your text and numbers. You also have what? You also have the styles where you perform conditional formatting. There are lots of menus in your home bar, right? Likewise, if you go to the insert, there are tables which allows you to insert pivot tables or this recommended pivot tables, which is a built-in AI that goes through your data and suggests a table based on the structure of your data. You have charts whereby you can insert maybe a pie chart, a line chart, a histogram, a scatter plot, and the rest. And you have filters, which is very important, where you can slice and the rest. And you have the text bar where you can just input some text, and you also have the symbols, right? So going to the third one, we also have the formula bar, which is very important, right? If you click on the formula bar, you see so many built-in formulas like the auto sum, like your recently used formulas, financial, your logical operators, your text. And if you hover over an item in the menu bar, there's a little bit of dialog box that pops up, giving you a more insights on what the item does. For example, now, if I hover over the auto sum, I can see that, let me see if I can zoom. If I hover over it, I can see a little documentation that says automatically add a quick calculation to your worksheet, such as a sum or an average, right? So I challenge you guys to go through all these bars, all these tabs, and familiarize yourself with them. For example, the key thing that I always use in this view bar is, for example, let's say I'm creating a dashboard, I can come and hide the grid lines, which hides the headlines or the formula bar as well, and the grid lines. You see, now the grid lines are gone. For example, if you want to create reports or dashboards, you don't want the grid lines to be visible. So you can bring them back by clicking on the grid lines as well. You can click on the heading to bring it back. And then you can click on the formula bar to bring it back. So speaking of the formula bar, let's go and explore the formula bar. This is called the formula bar, right? This particular bar is called the formula bar. This is where we're going to be writing most of our formulas. For example, if you impute a value into this cell, let's say 33, the value of the cell appears in the formula bar. And likewise, let's say, for example, I come to cell what? Cell G3 and impute a formula. For example, all Excel formulas begins with a what? Begins with an equal sign. For example, I can say equal, then, for example, equal to what? Equal to cell E3. Let me copy the value of this formula and press enter. So if I click on this, you can see that it is a formula, right? It equals to what? The value of what? You clicking the formula even highlights the cell that you copied from. it's telling me that there's a formula in this cell, right? So if you want to see if there's a formula in any cell, just click on the cell and look at the formula bar. It shows that we use a formula to copy the value of this cell, which is what? E3 to what? G to G what? E3, which is this, to what? To G3, right? As simple as that. So we're going to be covering some basic Excel formulas as we go on. So if you want to zoom into your document, you can just come down here and click on the plus icon. If this is something that you want, clicking on it, clicking on the plus sign zooms into the document, and then clicking on the minus sign zooms out of the document. So I don't want to go deeper into it. We can take months going through all these Excel menus and formulas and functions. So I just challenge you guys to just go through these bars. For example, this data, it's another important menu. For example, you can import data. For example, get external data. You can import data from Microsoft Access, from the web, from text, right? Or from any other sources, right? And you can sort your data, right? You can as well use some consolidations like text to columns, what if analysis, or forecasting as well, which we're going to be covering maybe in week 3. We're going to be covering this what if analysis or forecast sheet consolidations, or create a data model using Power Queries and the rest. So I believe by now you guys are familiar with what did I do? Sorry. I believe by now you guys are familiar with the Excel environment. For example, for the sake of beginners, let me just go ahead and do a little bit of for example, I can say, for example, sales. When I was a beginner, there's this thing that overwhelmed me. For example, sales data. As you can see, the value overlapped. Let me just go back to cell A. Cell A1, let's clear the content. Let's delete this. For example, going back to cell A, we can, let's say we want to create a little bit of data set, a sales data set, for example, sales summary, or something like annual sales summary. Annual sales summary. So by taking a look at this, beginners might think that this text is actually has spanned into cell B and cell C. No, it hasn't spanned into cell B and cell C, right? How do you actually fit this data into cell A? You can simply come, let me zoom on it. You can simply come and click on what? On this line between A and B, right? This between A and B. So if I double click on it, it's gonna auto adjust the cell and then fit my data, right? And let's say for example, you want to make this as a heading, right? For example, you can click on it, you can come to the home bar, you can make it bold, right? You can increase the font size, right? You can change the color, let's say from black to blue, right? You can even change the fill. For example, what this bucket does, it changes the color of the fill of that cell. For example, we can fill it to be dark blue, and then we can change the text color to be white, right? We can do anything that we want. So let's double click and adjust the size, right? So for example, let's say we want to we want to generate the sales data. For example, I can just go ahead and say something like products. I press my tab key. I can go ahead and say January. This one amazing thing about Excel, right? If I click on this January, this is what we call a fill handle, right? If I hover my mouse, let me see if I can zoom in. If we zoom in, please notice that there's a little box around this cell, right? This is called a fill. It's a tool that is so powerful. For example, like if I click and drag it, you see Excel automatically figure out that I wrote January. So, and I click the fill handle and drag. So it automatically figured out that the next thing is going to be February, March, April, May, June, July, up to November, right? So if I like, I can click and drag up to what? Up to December, right? That is why Excel is so powerful, right? So I can come here and let's say, for example, let's change this to a heading. For example, you might want a situation whereby you want this heading to be in the middle. If you've seen spreadsheets before, you can see that these headings are mostly in the middle. So it's so overwhelming for beginners. You can achieve this by actually using your select tool. This cross sign is called a select tool. By selecting a range, for example, this range, and then you come down to the home tab, right? And then click on what? Let's go back and select again. Click on what? Merge and center. Let me zoom on that. What this does, it combines all these cells, it merges them to one, merge and center, right? As you can see, it has matched the data. So it matched our sales, annual sales, and then it has centered it, right? So you can as well come here and add any products that you want. For example, a laptop, right? A laptop. For example, in January, we sold, let's say, 22 laptops. In February, let's say we have 33. So for the sake of time, I'm just going to use the fill handle, click and drag again. You see, it copies the values in this cell to the other cells. And likewise, if I like, I can click and drag it downwards, and it's going to do the same. So for this, let's add another product. For example, let's say a mouse, right? Let's say we sold 10 mouse. We can click and drag. For the sake of time, I'm just clicking and dragging for the sake of time, right? So if you like, you can come and you can make this bold by selecting it and clicking on B, which makes it bold, or italic, right? You can change the color as well to anything that you want. You can even change the font. Let's say I want let's say Calibri heading. I can choose Calibri heading as well. So you can do anything that you want. You can just come here like and make this bold as well, right? So for example, there's this function that is so handy for beginners as well. For example, if I come to the home bar and then where's this function? Yeah, there's this function called built-in function called AutoSum, right? I can just click on AutoSum. So Excel is so smart, it noticed that there are two data above here. So if I press enter, it sums the values here. So if I go ahead and click on the fill handle and drag it again, it applies the same formula to the other cells. For example, if I click on this, you see it has already highlighted that it is summing this value and this value, right? Same thing goes for this. Same thing goes for this. So you see, you can use the fill handle to copy a value or a formula from one cell to another cell. So I believe that will wrap up the Excel walkthrough. Let's just go ahead and dive into our today's analysis. After you're done, you can just go to the file and then save your file, right? Or save as. Then you choose the name that you want, and then you can save your file. So that will do for the Excel walkthrough. Let's go ahead and open our workbook, which is the sample student dataset. Browse. I believe it's in my downloads. Yeah, sample student data. And click on open. No, this is not the data that I want. Open, go to browse, downloads. I believe this is the one. Yep, that's the data I'm talking about. Please do verify in the chat section if you have this data set. Don't worry, if you don't have it, you can just go to the group and then download the data set. This is the data set that we're going to be working with today. How do I hide this? Okay. So this is the data set that we're going to be working with today. It's a student data set. It's actually ideal for beginners. Most of my students find this so simple, and it almost encompasses almost all the things that we're going to be covering today. For example, the first stage of data analysis is to what? Is to see if your data set has missing values. So let's take a look at it. By me looking at this data set, we know that we have a name column, right? With bunch of what? With bunch of names. We have a phone number column. For the sake of this tutorial, I don't want to be sharing a PII, which is personally identifiable information of users. So that's why I just imputed my phone number. I don't want to be using random people's phone number, whereby people, some students are just curious. They're going to be just calling people's numbers and adding them on WhatsApp and the rest. So this is my phone number for disclaimer purposes. So we have a math score here, right? We also have what? We also have English score, science score, right? And then study time per week. We also have what? Attendance in number of days and what? Favorite subjects. So if you take a close look at these data sets, there are missing values. So I did that intentionally, right? I added some missing values here. Let's say while imputing these data, we made some mistakes. For example, for these students, math score is missing. And for these students as well, math score is missing. Same applies for this last student. There's another missing value in study hours. There's another missing value in attendance, right? So the first stage is cleaning your data, right? Identifying missing values. So we've identified that there are missing values in our data. So how do we handle missing values? So by convention, if the missing value is numeric, we feel that by the average number, right? Average what? Average number. And if the missing value is categorical, for example, let's say if you take a look at this data, it's categorical, right? If the missing value is like this, then we choose the one that occurs most. We use the mod function to find the category that appears the most and then fill that missing value with the value, right? So in our case, math score is a number, right? So what we do is we fill that using the average of this math score. Same goes for this English score. Sorry, science score. So how do we do that? We can just, for the sake of these beginners, we can just go into another column here, go outside of your data set. Let me zoom that a little bit. So we are in what? We are in column J, cell 2, right? Column J, so we are enforcing our learning. Column J, cell 2. So what do? We create an if formula, right? So for the sake of absolute beginners, let me go back to my whiteboard. Where's my pen? For example, how do you calculate average? Average basically means mean, right? Let's refresh our statistics knowledge. For example, let's say you have numbers, for example, let's say 10, right? 20, right? And what? And 30, right? For example, the average of these numbers mean you have to calculate the average, right? Average of these numbers. The formula for average is sum of the numbers divide by the occurrences, right? Right? For example, here we have what? 10 plus what? Plus 20 plus what? Plus 30, right? Divide by the occurrences. How many? 1, 2, 3, divide by 3. This is going to give you the average, right? So in Excel, we're doing this for the sake of the absolute beginners. In Excel, you don't have to do this. There's a built-in function that's going to do this. For example, 10 plus 20 is 30. 30 plus 30 is what? 60, right? 60. Divide that by what? 3. So 60 divided by 3 is what? Is 20. So the average value is what? Is 20, right? So if you go back to Excel, you can just use a built-in formula to do that. There's no point in writing, for example, let's zoom out a little bit. There's no point in writing this plus this plus this plus this, divide by this, right? So what we do is, please, this is what we call conditionals as well. In Excel or programming, conditional means if statements, right? If, then you open a bracket, condition, comma, value if true. This condition has to be what? Has to be true. If this condition is true, then here is what you want to do. Else, if this condition is what? False, then do whatever that you impute here, right? For example, let's say we have let's say we have a cell like this, and there's a value 10 in the cell, right? So and the address of this cell is what? Is D, column D, row 2 is D2, right? So we can write a simple condition to check if, then open bracket. We always use the equal sign in Excel. It applies to programming as well, conditional statements. If D what? D2, we write it like this. If D2, right? If D2 is greater than 10. So that is my condition, comma. So is D2 greater than 10? No. 10 is not greater than 10, unless if I say greater than or equal to, right? Comma. Then, for example, then change D2, or you can do whatever you want. For example, I can write something like this, greater than 2. Greater than 2 like this as a string, comma. This will be displayed if the value is true. If it is false, then I can write comma, value if false, less than 10. Then I can close my bracket. So same thing applies. If D2 is greater than 10, what we want to do here is, if D2, for example, let's say we want to check if the values are empty. For example, let's say we have another cell here, which is A, row 1. Let's say the value is empty, right? So we can write an if statement. If A1, right, which is column A, cell 1, if A1 is equal to what? Empty. This is how we say empty in Excel or programming, just an empty string, comma, right? Then we use the average function. Average, which is just like this. Average, which accept a cell address. So average, then we pass in, for example, let's jump back to Excel for a minute. For example, we can see that the math score started from what? Started from C2, column C, row 2, up to what? Up to column C, row 25, right? So let's jump back to our whiteboard. Average of what? C2, you use column to separate two ranges, right? From C2 to C25, right? Else, that means it is not empty. So we're saying if A1 is empty, impute the average from C2 to C25. Else, just add the value of A1. Leave it as it is, right? And then we can close our bracket. So this is the formula that we can use to impute the average values to the empty cells. If A1 is empty, impute the average. Else, leave it as it is. Leave it as it. For example, if A1 is 10, if there's value in A1, so if A1 is empty, it is not empty, leave it as it is, which is 10. Leave it as it is. So let's go back to Excel and do that. For example, let's zoom out a little bit. We can go to this cell and write our formula. Let me zoom in. We always begin writing formulas in Excel using the equal sign. So equal sign. Why am I not seeing? Oh, sorry, the document is protected. That is why it is not allowing me to edit. So if you find yourself in the same scenario, just enable editing. You can as well click on File. It's just, if it's protected, it's going to show a pop-up window here. Document is protected. Just click on Enable Editing, and it's going to allow you to edit the document, right? So we can write an if statement here. Sorry, it always begins with an equal sign. Let me zoom in well so that you can see. Equal to if, open bracket. If you even write the if sign, you can see a little bit documentation. Checks whether a condition is met and returns one value if true and another value if false, right? So if, open bracket, what do we want to check? Let's go back. We want to check if this math score, right? Sorry. If what? If this math score, right? Let me just zoom out a little bit. It's not allowing me to do what I want. Equal to if, open bracket, this math score is equal to empty, comma, then we want to use the word, the average function returns the average arithmetic mean of its argument, right? So open bracket, let's give it a range. We want from C2, as we talked earlier, to what? To C25, right? As you can see, it has already highlighted from C2 to C25 is red, right? From C2 to C25, you want to press F4 to lock that down. F4, right? Or to make it more simpler, you can just say average from C to C. right? That will highlight the entire column, right? To avoid mistakes. Just from C to C, close bracket. Then, comma, if it is not empty, then just give me C2. Just give me the value. Let's press enter and see. So as you can see, the condition checked that C2 is 50. It is not empty. So it gave us 50 as well, right? So we don't have to repeat the calculation for the entire row. We can just use the fill handle. Just hover your mouse over the fill handle, click on it, and drag it down. This will perform all the calculations, right? But I made this mistake intentionally. If you take a look, we have NA, right? We are having NA. Why? Because we have an NA here, right? So by default, Excel does not know how to handle your data, NA, right? It doesn't know how to calculate this NA. So how do we fix that? How do we fix that? So click on this top left, which highlights the entire worksheet. Then press Ctrl H, which allows you to find and replace. So what do we do? What do we want to find? We want to find NA. What do we want to replace it with? We want to replace it with an empty value. So if you click on Find All, let's expand the window a little bit. It's going to show you that it has found NA, right? In 13 cells, right? So you say Replace All. So you see, we have made 14 replacement and then click on OK. So now if you go back to the cells, the empty cells, the NA are not available anymore, right? It has replaced all the NAs, right? So we can come back. As you can see, Excel is so smart, it has automatically corrected the formulas, right? But we don't want our averages. We want them to be in the same format. For example, we have 50 here, we have 35 here, but we have 43.3, right? So what do we do to fix this? There's another built-in function in Excel called the round function. For example, let me create a new sheet. For example, if you have something like 2.3333, right? Let's say you have this value, right? 2.333, and you want to remove this 0.333. What function do you use? Use the round function. Round, right? You open your bracket, then the number. We select the cell, which is this, right? Comma. The function accepts two parameters. What are parameters? Parameters are arguments that you pass to your functions. In a layman's understanding, they're just inputs to your function, right? So around A1, to what significant figure? To what number of digits? Okay, to 0 number of digits. We don't want any number away from the decimal point. So we just close the bracket like this and press enter. As you can see, 2.33 now became what? Became 2. So we can use the same function. Let's go back to the worksheet. We can use the same function to round these numbers and then remove any extra value from the decimal point, right? So let's double click. If we click on this cell, we can see the formula in the formula bar, right? We just said if this value is equal to empty, then calculate the average. So what do we do now? We know that it's the average that is giving us this headache, right? So we can just come to the average and write the round function, open bracket. So we just surround the average in a round function, then press comma to what's significant to 0. Let me just zoom on this a little bit so that you can see the formula. So we're just what we're doing is we're just rounding the average, right? We're just rounding the average. So if we press enter, it has already taken effect. So how do we ensure that it is rounded? So we can just come and click on the fill handle and drag it down. You see, it automatically rounded the numbers. So now we have performed our calculation. We have our new values, right? So how do we bring these new calculations and then replace the ones here, right? We already have a missing value here. We have already calculated the average and imputed. How do we bring them back? It's very simple. What you do is you click and drag, or you can just click on a single cell and press Control Space, which is going to highlight all the values. Or you can just use the selection tool to click and drag, right? And press what? Control C to copy. Or you can as well right click, there's copy, there's cut, right? So you can just click on copy. Then you come back. For example, this math score, you can click, you can drag, you can right click. Please do not go in and just paste like this. No, because these cells are referencing themselves. You just paste as what? As values. As you can see, we can paste as values, we can paste the formulas, we can transpose, and we can paste the formatting, right? What you want to do is you just want to paste the values, right? So just click on values, and then your values are there, right? Right? Sorry, Control Z, we made a mistake. Let's go back. Right click, copy, select, right click, paste values. So as you can see, now we have the values, right? But if you take a look, we are having 43, which is wrong. Let's do Control Z. We did something wrong here. We did something wrong. Let's click on our field handle. You have to be very careful while conducting this, right? So Control C, you come back, you highlight, right click, and then paste as values, right? Why are we having this? Sorry. Let me zoom out a little bit to do this correctly. Highlight, Control C, highlight, right click, paste values. And we've done it correctly now, right? So after you're done, you can just highlight this. You don't need it anymore. You can click on the column, right click, and delete, or you can highlight, right click, you can clear the contents, or you can delete. Shift cell to the left, okay. So it's gone, right? So now we found the average. We found the average for mathematics, right? So you can do the same step for what? For science. You can do the same step for what? Study time, since we have a missing value in study time, and you can do the same for what? For attendance. So for the purpose of beginners, let me just go ahead and do the same thing for science. And this a handy tool. The field handle can help us replicate the formulas to this. We don't have to write the formula again. But I did it on purpose because I want to show you guys again. So for example, let's say we want to impute the average science score to this missing cell. So what do we do again? We write our equal sign, because all Excel formulas begin with an equal sign. If, open bracket. So if this value, right, is equal to an empty value, comma, let's go back to the formula. We want to calculate the average, open bracket, from E2, as you can see, is E2, right? From E2, colon, to what? To E25, right? To E25. Press F4 to lock it down. Please always press F4 to lock it down. We want to be using this what we call absolute and relative references. Don't worry, we're gonna be covering this. Just for now, just press F4 to lock it down, right? For example, you can just say, or you can just say from E to E. Don't worry, we're going to be covering relative and absolute references in our next class. For now, just say from E to E, then close your bracket, right? Then value if true is if it is empty, average, right? Value if false is just give me the value if it is false, which is what? E2. And then close the bracket. So let me just go ahead and press enter. You see, the first value is what? 78. It is not empty. We got 78. But if you remember, we used the round function, right? So let's go back and do that again. We can come to the average on the formula bar, click on the round function, open our bracket, and then come back to where the bracket of the average is closed, close our bracket. Then go back inside, comma, to what significant figure? 0. We don't want anything, right? And we press enter. So now it has rounded. So we can come here, click on the fill handle, and drag it down. It has already calculated our average, and it has imputed, right? So you don't want to, Excel is very smart. Excel is very handy. We don't want to be repeating the formulas, right? So we know that for science, we have a missing value. For study time, we have a missing value here. And for attendance days, we also have a missing value. So study time, attendance, right? And we know that they are neighboring cells. For example, this is science, this is study time, and this is attendance, right? So Excel is so smart. For example, if you click and drag, if you come to the fill handle, if you click and drag it to the right hand, it automatically calculates and fills in the missing values for what? For study time, right? If you select it again, if you click on the fill handle and drag it to the right, it automatically calculates for what? For attendance days as well. So that is why Excel is so powerful, right? So now that we have correct data for science, correct data for study time, correct data for attendance, we can just select what? Select range, right? We can select them, right click, and we can copy them, right? We know that please be very careful while conducting this type of analysis, right? So how do you bring this data to here? So we know that this data belongs to what? Belongs to science, study time, attendance. So let's click on science. Let's move it to the right, study time. Click and hold your left mouse button, drag it across attendance, and then bring it down. Right click, paste values, which is the second one, and then you're done, right? So this data is not useful anymore, so you can just highlight it, right click, and delete. So we've already completed the first stage of data analysis, which is what? Handling missing values. For example, now if you take a look at that data, from English to what? To attendance, there's no any missing values. We have already handled that successfully. So we've successfully conducted the first stage of data analysis, which is cleaning your data and handling all missing values, right? So I don't know if time permits, we can go ahead and perform another analysis, because by taking a look at our objective, we have some things to cover. We have already handled missing values by using if and average. So the next thing to do is to split and format names correctly. So please, if you guys, if it's okay by you guys, we can add more time and perform some further analysis. Please, in the comment section, do indicate if you're okay with that.
Yeah, Mohammed.
If we're ready, we
Yeah,
can add
let's go
additional
ahead.
30 minutes.
Let's continue. After today, they'll have many days before
Yeah,
Sunday.
because
So for those who say they didn't get the formulas, the session is being recorded. So after this, you can go through the recorded session to catch up with the things you missed out during the class.
Yeah. If you can just go back through the recorded session, and don't worry, for the sake of you guys, I'm going to create maybe a PDF of all the formulas that we're going to be needing, right? All the essential formulas needed for everyday analysis, right? So let's go back to Excel again and continue our analysis. So the formulas we used are so simple, right? We use average, which is just used to calculate the average. We also used round to round numbers. For example, here we use the round function. If you take a look at the formula bar, we use round. You just say round this for me, and then you pass in the address of the cell, or you can just pass in the number as well. For example, I can just say this cell is equals to round, open bracket. What number do I want to round? For example, let's say 22.555, comma, to what significant figure? Okay, I don't want to see any number after this decimal point, right? If I don't want to see any number, I can just say, I want 0 number after the decimal point, and then I can close my bracket. I can just go ahead and press enter. You see, I get 23. So let's double click on the cell. Let's say I want 2 numbers after this decimal point. So what are we expecting? We're expecting what? 22.55, right? If I press enter, I get 22.56. You see, in our mathematics, if we go back to our fundamentals in mathematics during secondary schools, we know that if the number after the decimal place is up to 5, we can just add it to the previous number, right? So that is why we get 22.56. As simple as that. And we also use what? We also use average. For example, let's say we have 22 in this cell. We have, let's say 30, let's say we have 30 here, and let's say we have 50, right? Let me clear out these fields, right click, clear contents. So let's say we have these 3 numbers and we want to calculate their average. So what we do is we go into an empty cell. We know that Excel formulas begin with an equal sign. So what do? We write equal, right? What do we want to calculate? The average. What formula do we use? Just as the name implies, is average, right? So average, open bracket, right? The number that you want to average, right? So we want from C, click and hold your left mouse button from C3 to what? To E3. If you like, you can click and drag, or if you like, you can manually impute the cell ranges. Right? You see, I clicked and drag, and it automatically says it's from C3 to E3. Or if I like, I can just say from C3 colon to what? Sorry, from C3 colon to what? To E3. You see, it has already highlighted, comma, or close my bracket and press enter. So the average is 34, right? As simple as that. These are the functions that we used. These are the functions that we use. What if this value is what? What if this value is 33.99? If we press enter, you see we have 34.333. So, and we don't want any number after the decimal place. So what do? We use the round, right? We know that in Excel, you can use another formula inside another formula. So what do? We just use the round. What function do you use to round a number? We use the round function, open bracket, right? What again? Then you come here and then you close the bracket. If you see, the bracket for the average is red, right? And the bracket for the round is black. Excel has already differentiated that for you, right? So it is expecting a second number. For example, the round function, if you take a look at this documentation, it says, let me see if I can zoom on that. It says round, then the number, which we pass the average, comma, then the number of digits you want after the decimal point. So, comma, what number of digits do we want? 0. Press enter. You see, it has already rounded it to 34. So these are the formulas that we use, as simple as that, right? So now that our data is clean, what is the next stage of analysis? So if you take a look at the next stage after cleaning your data is to format your data. So how do we format your data? For example, if you take a look at this column, I did it intentionally. It's me, right? This column name is me. And if you take a look at the data in the column, it's names, right? For example, Mohammed, Kaka, Usman, right? So we begin by fixing this. We change this to what? Names. Right? But if you take a look at the names, they are not in a good format, right? For example, Mohammed Kaka, right? Abraham Exter, Modupe Olua, right? These names are cluttered. So how do we fix this? How do we fix this? We have to fix this, right? For example, we want a situation whereby we have a first name, for example, like Mohammed, and then what? And then Kaka, right? So there's a handy function in Excel to achieve that, right? So how do you achieve that? Select the cell, for example, here, right? And then go to data. Click on data, right? If you click on data, if you pay close attention, you have what is called what? Text to columns. I've highlighted this, right? Text to what? Text to column, right? So click on text to column. If you click on text to column, if you read what's in the wizard, it says this wizard determine that your data is delimited. What's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of delimited for the absolute beginners? Delimited means, for example, let me go back to the whiteboard. For example, let's say I have Mohammed Kaka, right? If you see, this is space here. So this is called the delimiter. For example, let's say if I have John, is it John, John Carter, right? John, comma, Carter, right? This comma is the delimiter. It's just the separator. What separates your data, right? What separates your data? Is it space or comma, whatever, right? Sometimes you might have a data like this, for example, Tom underscore Jerry, right? So this underscore is what separates your two words, right? Sorry, yeah, two words. This is the delimiter. So as simple as that. For the sake of actually beginners, I know the people maybe that have background in programming already know this, right? So let's go back to Excel. So Excel has already determined that my data is delimited, right? So let's close this for a minute. We have name, right? So we want to split these names to first name and last name. So let's create the space for that. Let's right click here and click on insert. What just happened? It inserted an empty cell to us. So let's name this cell first. First, right? So let's right click on this cell and click on insert again, right? Double click on the column name, delete, and then last name. Please choose descriptive name for your column. So for example, this first is wrong, right? We want it to be very descriptive. First name, right? And then last name, right? So then you highlight, for example, where is your name located? It is located in this column. So you click on the column, right? Then you go to data and click on the column, go to data, then text to column. So click on next. As you can see, the delimiters, right? Excel is asking for the delimiters. Let me zoom in a little bit. It's asking for the delimiters. You see, we have a semicolon, we have comma, we have space, and we have others. So we know that our names are separated by comma. Our delimiter is a comma, right? So we just go ahead and press what? Next, right? So the next thing Excel is asking is destination. Where do we want this separated text to go, right? Where do we want it to go? So let's click on this arrow, and then let's choose, we want it to be from B to C, right? We want these names to occupy these spaces from B to C. I just click on B and then drag my mouse, left click, drag my mouse to C, right? What do I do next? And then I click on finish. Nothing happened, right? So we made a mistake, right? While I was explaining, while I was zooming, I made a mistake. So what do we do now? We click on the column again. Sorry. We click on the column. We go to text to column. Click on next. Delimiter, uncheck the tab. We don't have tab, we just have spaces. Click on next. So where do you want your data to go? We want it to go, from B to C, and then we click on the arrow again, and then we click on finish. Right? So if you take a look at what happened, something very bad happened, right? And there's a reason for that. And I did this intentionally, right? So as you can see, we have Mohammed Kaka. For example, Mohammed Kaka is okay. We have Mohammed, we have Kaka, right? But for Abraham, Esther, and Modupe, there are 3 names, right? And for example, for this user, we have for this Khadija, there's an error in her name. For example, if I double click, you can see that there's a space before the K, right? Let me zoom on it so that you see. This is all done intentionally so that you see. For example, if you take a look at this K, there's a space here that I added intentionally, right? To prove to you guys that it's breaking the text by the delimiter. So you see, it added this empty cell, Khadija, Aliu, and then Sugarbar. So there are 3 names, right? So, and we just want the first name and the last name. So even though this function is handy, if your names or if the text that you want to split have more than 2 words, for example, if we only have Mohammed and Kaka, it's okay. We can just go ahead and rename these cells to first name and last name. But we have people with 3 names. So how do we solve this problem? There's always a way in Excel. So we press Control Z to undo what we did. Control Z, right? There's a very simple function we can use to achieve that. For example, I can come to this first name and say Mohammed. Right? I know that my first name is Mohammed, and what is the last name is Kaka, right? I can come here and say Kaka, right? I have my first name, I have my last name. Why did I do that? I'm just teaching Excel that the first name is Mohammed and the last name is Kaka. So how do we populate that? We don't want to be doing things manually, right? We want to automate. Let's say we have 10,000 or 1 million students, right? So I can come and click on here where I'm expecting the next name to be. And then there's one tool that is called a flash fill. It's just like magic. If you click on the cell, if you go to data, and inside data, there's a tool called a flash fill. This tool, which was like magic, right? A flash fill. So if I click on the flash fill, watch what happens. Excel automatically knows it recognizes that there's Mohammed here. So it recognizes the patterns and then automatically added Usman, John, right? All the first names. The same thing for the last name. If I click on the last name where I'm expecting it to be, go to my data tab and click on the flash tool, you see all the last names are imputed. For example, the last name for the first name for this name with a 3 name is Abraham Esther Modupe, but I don't want the middle name. You see, I just want Abraham and Modupe Olua, right? For this name, Angeli Bright Bola, I just want Angeli and Bola, right? The first name and the last name without the middle name. So the flash fill, it's a very handy tool if you find yourself in these types of scenario, right? It's like magic. You just understand the patterns and then it imputes all the values for you. So now, since we have already obtained our first and last name, what do we do next? We don't need this anymore. We can just click on the column, right click and delete, right? So now we have our first name, we have our last name. We have already formatted our data. So what do? We just highlight this and then make it go to the home tab and make it bold. So now our data is taking shape, our data is clean now, right? So let's take a look at this data. What do we have to fix again? What do we have to fix? These phone numbers. For example, if you take a look at these phone numbers, they are +23480, right? So we don't want a situation, we don't want these code numbers, since we know all these students are in Nigeria, so we don't need all these +234. So how do we remove this +234 and replace it with a 0? It's simple, it's very simple. So you just go to an empty cell. For example, here, we use a formula to do that. There's a fine built-in function in Excel that is called substitute, right? So we just press equal sign, then substitute. So if you take a look at the documentation, it expects 3 arguments: the text that you want to substitute, the text that you want to manipulate, the old text that you want to change, and the new text that you want instead. So what text are we trying to change here? Let's zoom out a little bit. We want to manipulate this text. So we selected that, right? Let me zoom out. Let me zoom out. So equal sign. Let me zoom out a little bit so that you guys see what I'm selecting. Don't worry, I'm going to zoom in when I'm done. Equal sign, then the function name, which is substitute. The text that I want to manipulate is this, the phone number. Just select the first phone number. You don't have to select the entire thing. Excel knows, right? So after the text, then write comma. What do I want to replace? In a double quote, as a string, sorry. In a double quote, I want to replace the +234, right? Then close the string, comma. What do I want to replace it with? I just want to replace it with 0 as a string, 0, right? Then I close my bracket and I press enter. You see, now we have what? Now we have my number, right? Without the +234. Let me click on it so that we see the formula one more time. Let me zoom on it. What did we do? Zoom. So this is the formula, right? We're just saying, we just use the substitute formula, and then we passed in, this is a reference to the phone number. So we want to what? We want to replace this value with what? With this value. So it will just go, it will look at the phone number, and it will replace this +234 with what? With this, with 0, right? So this is basically what we are doing. So, and we know that our fill handle is so handy, right? We can just come here and we can click on this fill handle and drag it down. You see, now it formatted everything for us. It knows, right? It references all the data and it formatted everything for us. You just have to show Excel a single way of doing it, and it's going to help you duplicate that step. That is why Excel is so powerful. So we can just highlight, right click, copy or cut, right? We can cut or copy, come here, zoom out a little bit to ensure that we are highlighting the right thing, select our data, right click and paste. Sorry, we made a mistake, Control Z. You can always do Control Z when you make a mistake, right? Sorry, we made a mistake while copying. Let's go back, Control Z to undo the copy. As you can see, we made a mistake. We did not copy the entire thing, right? We just copied from here to here. So always zoom out to ensure that you're copying the right thing. Highlight. Highlight. I'm just zooming in and out for the sake of you guys. Copy. Highlight. Right click. Paste as values. Please paste as values. Do not paste in, do not paste, because we used a formula to reference this. If you paste as normal pasting, it's going to reference the cell. So the cell is referencing itself. Since we use the cell to perform the calculation, it's going to reference itself, and it's something that you don't want, right? Just paste as values. So you can come here. You don't need this anymore. You can click on the column, or you can just highlight the data, right click, and delete. So now our phone numbers are formatted, but Excel is complaining that if you see this arrow, it's saying that the number in this cell is formatted as text, right? Or preceded by an apostrophe. Yeah. So since we have already, we want it as a text. So you can just click and say, for example, if you say convert to number, watch what happens. Convert to number, right? It's going to convert to number. And the problem with this is it removes the first zero if you convert it to number. So we want it as a text, right? So let's do Control Z to undo what we did. What are we doing? Let's zoom out. Let's do Control Z. Sorry. So we can click on the arrow and just say ignore error, right? Highlight. Click on the arrow and just say ignore error, and the error is gone. So now our data is formatted correctly, right? We have our first name, we have our last name, we have formatted our numbers, right? We have calculated, we have checked missing values, and we have found missing values, and we have replaced missing value with averages. Our data is clean, our data is well spread out, and our data is consistent, right? So, for example, if you take a look at this first name, it's taking a lot of space, right? How do you fix that? You can just come here, hover in between A and B, and double click. Excel is going to resize this one. If this is what you want, we can come to the last name, double click, and it's going to resize. The phone number, double click, it's going to resize, right? To fit in the data. Let me just resize it because I don't want it to be consuming more space and spanning across my screen. Right? So here is our data. Our data is clean now. So we are done with the second stage of analysis. We have cleaned our data, and we have what? We have formatted our data to fit our need, right? So let's, what do we have to do to this data now? What do we have to do? Let's go ahead. I'm sorry, let me plug in the laptop. It's warning me that the battery is low. Yeah, sorry for that. So what do we have to do now? So if you take a look at this data, the next thing that we want to do is to see how we can further format this data. If you take a look at this data, our students, for example, by convention, all students have an ID number, right? So I believe the next thing we can add to this data is an ID number. So how do we do that? How do we add an ID? How do we dynamically generate an ID to our students, right? So it's very simple. First, you have to know where you want the ID number to be. So I want the ID number to be after first name and last name, right? So let me go ahead, click on C, right click, and then insert. This is going to insert a new column between last name and phone number, right? Double click on the name, and then change it to what? Student ID, right? So how do we generate an ID? So there are many ways of generating this ID. Let me go back to our practice sheet. Let me just delete all the elements. And then let me delete, or yeah. So let's say, for example, and let's say you have let's say you have Mohammed here, right? And let's say you have Kaka, right? Let's resize it. We know that cell B2 is Mohammed and cell C2 is Kaka. So there's one thing we call concatenation, right? For example, let's say in C, we can just say equal to, then click on Mohammed, space, then an, space, then Kaka. We press enter. So what do we just do? We just concatenate it, we add it. For example, if it's number, we can just say we summed, right? But if it is text, we just say we concatenated Mohammed and Kaka into one place, right? Let's say, for example, you want a space here, you can just double click, and edit the formula a little bit. So I want Mohammed and then a string like this, you add a space and space again. If you press enter, you see I've just added a space in between Mohammed and Kaka. So we've concatenated. So we're getting the, so what do we have to do in order to create an ID number for this name? There are many ways of doing that, but I chose the most simplest way to achieve that, right? So let me delete this, right click, delete. We don't need that anymore. So how do we do that? We can just say equal sign, right? And there's this function that I want to introduce to you guys, which is called row. Let's read the documentation. Returns the row number of a reference. For example, if I row, then open bracket, if I click on this Kaka, and then close my bracket, and then I press enter, I get what? 2. So it makes sense. If you take a look where this Kaka is located, here is row 1, here is row 2. So what row does, it just returns the row number of the cell, right? 2, 1, 2, right? Very good. So we're going to be using this row. What again? We are also going to be needing a text function, text. So what this text does is, let's read the documentation, converts a value to text in a specific number format, right? So for example, if you set text, and if you pass it something like, let's say 222, then comma, what type of formatting do you want? Let's say I want 000 as a string. If I close the bracket and I press enter, I get nothing, right? Right? So let me convert this to a string. 222. I get the same thing, right? So how do we use this text and these what do you call it? Let's remove this 0. This row number to generate an ID number, right? So what I did was, let me delete this, equal sign, right? STU, which makes sense, right? Student, right? And then I use and. right? I just want to concatenate student, and then I use the text function, right? And then what do I pass to the text function? The row. I just want the row number of this. Don't worry, in a minute, you're going to understand the formula, right? Row number of what? Row number of this. And then I close in the bracket, right? Then, comma, right? What again? Don't worry, you're going to be understanding in a minute. The student, the row number, yeah, we just pass in the text format and the string 000, close in the text format, and then close in our bracket and press enter. You see, we get what? Stu002, right? For example, let's say we have Tom, Jerry. Tom is the first name, Jerry is the last name, right? Let's move. Sorry, I did not introduce you guys to this move handle. For example, if you hover over here, as you can see, there's an arrow, right? There's an arrow. There's a four-corner arrow. If you come here, it turns to a fill handle, right? But if you hover across this border, on this border, it shows an arrow. So you can click and drag, right? So it is used to move a value in the cell to another cell, as simple as that, right? So if I click this and drag, you see, we get Stu 002 and Stu 003, right? Same thing happens if I click and drag, you see, 001, 002, 003, 004, 005. So how do we use this formula? How do we use this formula? But if we take a look at this formula, it's giving us a wrong value, right? Instead of this to be 001, 002, I believe these are how ID numbers are supposed to be. So how do we fix that? We can come to the row and then subtract 1 from it. And then press enter. You see, now we have student 001 to what? Student 006. You see, to 1, to 2, to 3. So as simple as that, these two can be anything. For example, CPE, right? CPE 001, CPE 002, right? It could be anything, right? So this is how you dynamically generate an ID. For example, I can change this formatting in the text to something like just a single 0, and I press enter. You see, I get CPE1, right? So if I add another 0, I want 0, 0, right? I get 001, as simple as that. So let me zoom on the formula so that we see the formula again. Don't worry, I'm going to be dropping all these formulas for you guys. Where do I zoom this? So you see, it's just CPE, and then what? We use the AND to concatenate this CPE. This row number, I'm sorry, I used the wrong thing. This row number returns this value, which is what? Which is 2, right? Minus 1, we're just subtracting 1 because it's giving us 2. So we're just subtracting 1 from 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. That's self-explanatory. And then we are formatting it. We're just saying add double zeros. As you can see here, add double zeros, right? If you make this 04, it's going to be 3 zeros, right? It's neglecting this first 0, right? As simple as that. So let's use this knowledge to create our ID numbers. So we can just come here. We can just put an equal sign. Let me zoom in a little bit. Let me zoom in. Equal sign. STU as a string, right? Then use the AND to concatenate that. Then what again? We use our text to format. Then the row function, which returns the row number of this name. Then click on the name, plus the bracket for the row number, comma. How many zeros do you want? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Or just 3 zeros is okay. 2 zeros is okay. If you pass 2, it's going to be 1, 0. If I pass 3, 0, it's going to be 2, 0. Then we close our bracket and press enter. As you can see, automatically Excel understood the tax, right? It created the ID numbers dynamically. So, but if we take a look, it started from 2, which is something that we don't want. So we can select the first cell, come to the formula bar, and then subtract 1 from the row value. You can just come here and say -1 and press enter. You see, as soon as I press enter, Excel understood the tax and it dynamically adjusted for all the students, right? So you see, now our data contains another column, right? We added student ID number to the data. So this is how you use Excel's power to be conducting all your data analysis. This is why we chose Excel, right? So we can further do some exploratory data analysis. For example, I'm curious, as a teacher, I'm curious. I want to see the average score of all students, right? So I can just come here, click here, and then, or I want a sum of score for each student, right? So I can just come in and say something like total score, and then press enter. This creates a new column for me. So this is very simple. Total score is very simple. I can just go ahead and say equal to, then sum. We know what sum function does. It just calculates, adds everything. So I want the sum of mathematics, English, and science, right? Press enter. Excel automatically calculated that for me in literally some milliseconds, right? This is the total sum of score for each and every individual student, right? Okay, let's say I'm curious. Let's say I want to calculate the average score, right? I can just come here and say average score, right? And press enter. How do we calculate average? We've used average before. We just write average and then we pass in the data. So all Excel formulas begin with an equal sign, average, AVERAGE, open bracket. Select the data range. I want the average from maths, English, and science. Then I release my left click. And then without even closing the bracket, I'm just going to press enter. But if you remember, average always returns a number like this, right? Which is something that we don't want. We want to round it. So we use the what? We use the round function, just like we did earlier. So how do we fix that? We double click so that we get the formula. So we will come back to the formula bar, right? We come back to the formula bar. After the equal sign, we can just say round, open bracket, go to the end, and then close our bracket. Sorry, comma. How many digits after the decimal place? 0. Then close our bracket and press enter. Excel understood the tax and automatically calculated the average for us and rounded all the figures. So we've calculated the what? We've calculated the total score. We've calculated the what? The average score, right? So what are we going to do again? I believe we can analyze this data further. If we like, we can add a remark, right? It always makes sense to add a remark to your data. So how do we achieve that? We can zoom out a bit. We can come here and write remark. This is so amazing. How do you add a remark? It's very simple. We just use logical statements, right? There's this function that we used earlier, which is called logical statements. For example, where's my pen? This if condition, right? Then, comma, or value if true, comma, value if false, close bracket. And this what is called, let me change the pen color. Where's the pen color? Here's the pen color. Let me make it red. So these are let me increase the pen thickness. There's another if that in Excel that is called ifs with an S. This is used to write multiple conditions, right? For example, if you take a look at this, it only has single condition, right? Only single condition. And if this condition evaluates to true, it outputs this value. If it is false, it outputs this value, right? But in this ifs, you can have a condition, which is C, comma, value if true, comma, value if false, comma, another condition, C, comma, value if true, comma, value if false. Another condition, C, comma, value if true, comma, value if false. So you can have several, it's in programming, it's like having if, if, like in Python, right? Another if, then an else for the programmers in the class, right? So this like using a single if statement, and this is like using if and else ifs. If, right? So we can use these several conditions to add remark to our students, right? So let's go back to Excel. How do we achieve that? We can come back to this remark and write our if statement. So, and the formula goes like this. Let me think about it. So if all Excel formulas begin with what? Begin with an equal sign. Let me zoom it a little bit so that you see what I'm doing. Equal sign, if, open bracket. What is the condition that we are looking for? What is the condition that we are looking for? The average score, right? So click on the average score, or you can put the cell address. It is in L2, right? If L2, right? If L2 is greater than or equal to 80, we believe that when you score above 80, it should be what? I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I say we're going to be using ifs, right? This average score is greater than or equal to 80, comma. If that is true, then go ahead and write excellent. Excellent. Right? Comma, another logical test. So if this value, right, is greater than or equal to 60, right? What do we do? Comma, go ahead and write something like good. I don't know, yeah, something like good. You can write anything that you want for your remarks. I just want to put good, comma. If my third logical test is if this value, right, is less than 60, comma, what do you write? Let's say, what do I write? Let's say needs improvement. Needs improvement, right? As simple as that. I'm done. So I can just close my bracket and press enter. Oh my goodness, Excel understood the tax and then it calculated for everything. Let's zoom out a little bit and see. Let's prove, please. We have 73, which is less than 80. Okay, we have good, we have 58, which is less than 60, needs improvement, We have 79, which is less than 80, good. We have 81, which is above 80, which is excellent. We have another, okay, we have 2 excellent, right? We have another student that is above, that is 80, which is excellent as well. So you see, this is how you add remarks to your data, right? Using several if and else statements. So I'm curious again, there's another analysis that I want to conduct. For example, by me looking at this average score, it doesn't give you a clear view of the data, right? It doesn't give you a clear view of the data. Okay, I want a vision, right? I want a visual expression that clearly states the average, that clearly defines my average, right? So how do we do that? How do we achieve that, right? It's very simple. Yeah, it might be a little bit complicated, but it's so simple, right? It's just a click of a button without writing any code. So I can just click on my average score. Then where do we go? We click on home. Go to what? Let me zoom in. Go to this conditional formatting, right? This conditional formatting. We can use we can do it programmatically, but why do it programmatically when there's a built-in function that does that for us? So we can click this conditional formatting and then highlight cell rows, right? And then greater than, right? So it brings us to a window, format cells that are greater than, right? So if our value is greater than 80, what do we want to do? We want the cell color to be green. Press OK. You see, automatically these cells turn to green, right? Let's go back to the conditional formatting again. Highlight cell rules. What again? What is our second rule? It says if it is greater than or equal to 60, right? Okay. Is there any greater than or equal to? Yeah. Okay. Let's say between if it is between 60 to what? And 79, right? I want it to be, let's say, yellow. Yeah, you're around that stage, right? Yellow. And then I'm going to go ahead and press OK. You see, all the values above 60 and below 79 are yellow. So let's say, okay, let's do for the red one, highlight less than. If you are below 60, then just fill it with red. And then just like that, oh my goodness, we highlighted the ranges wrongly. Yeah, but that will do, that will do. So if you see, by me looking at this data, we know that green, right? Green, okay? There's green, excellent. And there's what? Oh, we missed something. We missed 80. So, okay, let's say you're performing your formatting and you made a mistake. How do you go back and fix it? So you just highlight the range again, go to the formatting, but this time, instead of clicking on the highlight cell rules, go to manage rules. You've already done the rules, right? Manage rules. So which rule do we want to manage? We know that 80 is between the excellent range, right? So this is the green. Click on the green, right? And then click on edit rule. So we said greater than 80. That is why 80 is not included. So how do you fix that? We just come and then what? Let me zoom in a little bit. You see, we have the cell value, which is the 80, greater than. We use greater than instead of greater than or equal to, right? As you can see, equal to 80. If it is greater than 80, it turns green. So how do you fix that? We just click this and choose, is it greater than or equal to? Yeah, greater than or equal to 80, and then click on OK. Apply, OK. As soon as we do that, we can see that 80 is included again. Let's go back, let's fix this. It's highlighted this as well. We can just simply do this and fix this, right? Or we can right click and then clear formatting. Yeah. We made a mistake and highlighted the entire thing. So I don't want to, because of time, I don't want to go back on check everything, and we just mistakenly highlighted the entire column. But it doesn't matter since it's doing what we want, right? You can just, before you begin your highlighting, just come here, highlight the data range that you want, right? So by me looking at this data, I know that whoever that is having yellow, by me looking at this data, whoever that is having yellow is good, and whoever that is having red needs improvement, and whoever that is having green is excellent, right? By me looking at these numbers, I don't have to be zooming in and out. By me looking, I know that I have 2 greens, right? So is there any analysis that we have to do again? Yes. What analysis? If we like, we can rank our students, right? For example, first position, second position, third position, right? How do you do that? It's so simple, right? We can just create a new column, rank, and then we can come here. There's a built-in formula in Excel that will help us do that. So we always begin with with the equal sign, then rank, open bracket. Don't worry, these functions are overwhelming. I'm gonna be dropping it for you guys. Go back, watch the recording again, use the formulas, and then perform the analysis on your own with the data set I provided, right? Once you do it once or twice, it's gonna be so simple for you guys. So rank the students, right? The number, which number? Okay, let me rank the student based on their total score, okay? Come and click on this total score, comma, the cell reference, okay? I want this student to be ranked among his fellow students, right? So where is the data? From what? From K2 or just from K to K? Simple as that. You see, it automatically highlighted the range from K to K. That's the data set that I want. Comma, the third parameter is, do you put 0 to sort it in a descending order and put 1 to sort it in an ascending order? So I want it in a descending order, right? From 1, 2, 3, 4, right? I'm going to put 0 and then close my bracket and press enter. My students are ranked automatically. But this rank is not going to give you a very good clear view. So let me introduce you guys to sorting and filtering. So I can use this rank to sort my students. So just come and click anywhere in your data. For example, you can click on any cell and you can click on any cell, right? After click on any cell, go to and click on your data, and then you can see sort, right? Click on sort. It brings you to a new model. So sort by what? Click on the drop down. We want to sort by the rank, right? And then we want to use the cell value, and we want to sort from smallest to highest. And then we come and click OK. You see, now our data is sorted from the first position, second position, up to the what? 24th position. So let's zoom out a little bit. Our data is sorted, right? By me looking at this, we know that Abraham Modupe is the first position, right? And Samir second, and who is the last? Ibrahim Ahmad is the last position. So now we've done our analysis. We've imputed null values, right? We have formatted the phone numbers to suit what we want. We've created what student ID numbers, right? What did we do again? We calculated the average. We calculated the total score. We added some conditional formattings to the cell. to have a clear visual impression of what is happening in the average. We added remarks and we ranked our students. So I believe I don't want to give you guys information overload, and please use this knowledge to perform, go and do the analysis on your own. Go and open the value, go and explore the data set that I provided you guys, clean the null values, format the numbers, convert the names from first name to last name, impute the averages, calculate the average score, the total score, to remark and rank. This knowledge applies to any type of data analysis. You can use this to analyze sales data. You can use this to analyze any data, right? So for the sake of time, I'm going to stop the class here. I don't want to give you guys information overload. So I will hand over the class to Justice to take over.
Yeah, thank you, HMC. It has been an amazing session, and at least we are trying as much as possible to ensure that it's best for everyone to benefit from it. And I think that the students also need to know that each of these sessions have been recorded. And the reasons why they are being recorded is so that you don't feel like, oh, you don't feel left out. So after the session, you have enough time to go over each and every one of them. You do recap as much as you might want to do. And then where you guys have challenges, you can drop your challenges. So, and another thing too, that I also want to narrow down is Excel is a vast field. So the more the program continues to go, try to narrow it down to your own career-wise, because don't just be a copycat. So now you have an exercise that has been given to you. You have been given a data set to practice based on a specific statistics. When you're done practicing on that statistics, you now go to your own field where you work. How does it relate to you? Maybe if you are into finance and accounting, you start looking at total revenue, all those things accountant deals with, maybe average monthly sales, all those things. Or if it's in terms of investment, if it's in terms of tax calculations, you now start dealing with those things. If you're into sales and marketing, you have a lot of roles to play when you have to talk about your total sales, marketing budget, all those things. You will, because whether you like it or not, you must calculate average. Some to some extent, you will calculate some, you will calculate minus, you will try to deduct, you will need to get balance. Even human resource personnel, engineering as well, is in every field. And I think today's session will even help most of those who are lecturers in terms of you grading your students, because those if conditions, you can even decide to say, okay, if somebody, instead of using excellent, if it above A, give the person A. If it's between 60, 70 or 60, 80, give the person B. Between 50, 60, give the person C. Maybe below 50, give the person E or F. So these are real life scenarios we are facing. And irrespective of your field, you can apply these rules, whether it's logistics and procurement, whether it's real estate, whether it's constructions, whether it's IT, and so mention it. And you can only get the best when you do practice after class. So now, after now, you have enough time from now till Sunday that we are meeting again, where you'll be interacting with your trainer to do a great job. So maybe if you guys have any questions for your trainer, maybe before we end tonight's session, so that you guys can go back and watch the recordings of today's class, then you people can have the opportunity to ask the question. Maybe if somebody has something to say, you have the opportunity to maybe unmute your microphone and ask. I think so. Maybe we can give somebody an opportunity to ask any question. If you have that you feel okay, you really want to ask, that is not something that has been recorded, that you watch, please, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Good
Prince,
evening, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, the lady speaking should go ahead first.
All right. Thank you very much for the training. I noticed that the sorting of the ranking affected the ID numbers that were originally assigned to the students.
Okay.
Yeah, so how to fix that? Because it's not supposed to, like, a student's ID number doesn't have to change because he's now last position in the class. So how do you do it so that it doesn't affect the ID numbers?
I get what you're saying. For example, when we added the number, right? And then we please would you mind going through the
Sorry, I didn't hear you well.
would you mind repeating the question again, please?
Okay, I noticed that the sorting that was given to the ranking, the positions based on the average scores, when you
Okay.
sort the ranks from first to the 24th person in the class, it affected the ID numbers that were given to the students originally. So the
Oh
last
yeah.
person
I understood that.
had
I understood that. Yeah,
24. So it
for example,
was
when we added the ranking, sorry,
yeah,
when we dynamically created a student's ID number, and then
yeah.
we sorted the data, right, using the word,
Yeah,
using the
MC, if
rank.
your screen is on, maybe you just share so that we look at it and then we can maybe see it together and learn from it.
All right. Let me go back to, let me open Excel again. Wait, share screen. Student data set. Share. All right. So I understood what she was trying to say. She's saying that okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, you're saying that this student ID number changed, right?
Yes. It's now according to the ranking, which was
Yeah,
not
it's not,
originally.
yeah, it's not already everything sorted well, but the student ID number, right, did
Yes.
not, is not affected. So how do you fix that? You can, for example, you can just go ahead and calculate the rank aside, right? Sorry,
Okay.
you can, to fix this issue is simple. You can just go ahead and generate the ID number somewhere. For example, for mathematics, we calculated it aside and then we pasted as values, right?
Okay.
Right. You can do the same thing for the student ID as well, or you can include, for example, the student's let's say first name, right, or the end of this phone number. For example, I can just go, if I like, I can go ahead and add the last digit of my phone number or the first two alphabets, right?
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Right? And then
Yeah.
come and paste it as paste specials. For example, let's say, okay, let me copy this for instance. Right click and copy. Okay, if I select this cell, right click, right? I can paste it directly
Okay.
without the values like this, right? But it's numbers, I get any. So if you paste it as special, it's not gonna affect the sorting as well, right?
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes.
So please, I encourage you to go and try it and then sort the ranking and see if it's gonna fix that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And please, if you face any challenges, just do reach out to me and via the group. I'm gonna help you guys with that. But it's simple. You can mitigate that by performing a calculation on that and then pasting it as special. Then it's not gonna affect the sorting.
okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe the reason why it's affecting the sorting is because we are sorting from what, from highest to lowest, right? And if you take a look at these values, this numerical value, which is from what, from 1 to
1
24,
to
right?
4.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I believe that that is another reason that Excel is definitely going to use this to sort in ascending order, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So play around with it and see if you can mitigate this issue, right?
Okay.
Do you have any
Thank
question
you.
apart from that, please?
Yeah, I already asked the question earlier.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Yes,
The lady.
when he was doing first name, last name arrangement, I already asked if these names can be arranged in alphabetical order, whether according to the first name or according to the last name. Can it be in alphabetical order? If yes, what's the function for that?
You can just sort it in an alphabetic order, right? Just click on the click on anywhere in the cell, right? And then you can just click on sort, right? After clicking on sort, right, you can just go ahead and sort by what? Sort by first name, right? And then from A to Z or from Z to A, as simple as that, right? You see, it's sorted from what? From Abraham, from A, then F, right? Then M, then S, then T, right? So if you like, you can select the range and then sort it based on that range, as simple as that. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and if you take a look, it's just this when we did this calculation, we will not paste it as special. That's why it is affecting it. But if you take a look at the excellent, for example, Abraham was first and she's still first here, right? And the remark is still excellent, right? And the ranking is still first, right? So you can sort in the descending order as well. Just select the column, right? Select any cell in the column. For example, I can click anywhere. I can just click on, let's say, Dorcas, then click on sort, right? I want to sort it by the word, by the first name, right? And then I want to do what? I want to sort it, in a descending order, right? And then okay, you see, you can do this as well, right? And you see, everything is sorted. Not only the name, but everything is sorted, right? Excluding the ID. So any question, please? What's the next question?
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, I can hear you.
Yes, my own is in the conditional statements.
Okay.
We wanted to use if before we now use ifs. So when are we to use if and when are we to use ifs?
All right. See, okay, that's a very interesting question. That's a very, very interesting question. Let me go back to the whiteboard to answer your question. For example, let's say you want to check. Let's say, for example, can you see my whiteboard?
Yeah, no, not yet. You have to stop sharing and link to your
I'm not seeing
whiteboard.
your whiteboard.
Can you see my whiteboard now?
No.
Oh, sorry, I'm sharing the
You're sharing the Excel sheet
that's why.
and not the screen.
Okay, let me share my whiteboard. Can you see the whiteboard now?
No.
Yes.
You cannot see the.
No, I can
You
see
cannot see
it now.
Okay. So for instance, let's say we have scores. For example, let's say we have scores, right? Like this, right? And we have a condition whereby we know that as students, we know that anything above 80 is what? Is A, right?
Excellent.
Very good. So anything below 70 is what? It should be like B, right? Then
yes.
Anything below 60, let's call it C, right? And then anything below, let's say 45,
D.
That should be E or F. I believe that should be F. That should be E. That should be E, right? So let's call this remark.
E.
Let's call, and anything below 45 is F, right?
F is 39.
Or F is 39. Thanks for that correction. 39. Let me just correct that. Okay, F is 39. Right. So how many conditions do you have here? We have, there's a condition whereby a student should be A. There's another condition whereby a student should be B. There's another condition whereby a student might be C. There's another condition where a student might be E. There is another condition where a student might be what? F. So how many conditions do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 conditions that determines a student's score, right? So whenever you have many conditions like this and you want to check against them, you use what? You use ifs, right? And let's say you have a single condition. For example, let's say for example, you have a weather. Let's say for example, you have a dashboard that displays the daily weather. For example, let's say it's 45 degrees, right? I want to check against that. If it's above 45, if the weather is greater than 45, right, it's hot. If it's greater than 45, then it's considered to be hot, right? And anything 45 is too hot. let me refactor it. 45 is too hot. It doesn't make sense. 45 is too hot already. So if the weather is 30, for example, let's say 20. Let's be realistic. Let's say 20. If it's 20, you know that it's cold, right? And anything above that, anything greater than that is considered to be what? Hot.
Hot.
Right?
Yes.
So what condition do you have here? You just have a single condition, cold or hot, right? You have how many conditions do you have? 1, 2, right? Is either it is cold or what? Or hot. Very good. So, but here, how many conditions do you have? If it is not A, it is B. If it is not B, it is C. If it is not C, is E. If it's not E, it's F, right? So you have many conditions that you're taking against. So you use ifs. But here, you can use a single if to achieve this result. For example, you can say if, for example, let's say this T is temperature. For example, you can say if this temperature, let's say, for example, is in cell B, if it is in column B, cell 1, right? If it is in column B, cell 1, you can just say if B1 is greater than, sorry, no, you have to finish the condition before you say the comma, right? If B1 is greater than 20, comma, what do you want to say? If it is greater than 20, answer that. What do you want to say?
It's hot.
If the weather is greater than 20, it's hot, right? Very good. Hot.
Yes.
Very good. Else what? Else cold, right?
Cold.
Very good.
Yes.
Cold. Close your quotation and then close your bracket. So it is going to check this condition. It is going to check, is this greater than 20? If it is greater than 20, then it is going to put this value to the cell, hot. Else, if it is not greater than 20, is going to be what? Cold. So you only have a single condition that you're checking against, right? which is either cold or hot.
Or hot.
So this is when you use if. This is when you use if. You have only two conditions. But when you have like 3 conditions or 4 conditions that you want to check against, you use ifs. As the name implies, now we are just using a bunch of ifs, right? Ifs.
Okay.
If you have many conditions that you want to check, right? For example, you want to check if this one is 80, right? If it is 80, you give something like A, right? L if, let me go ahead and clean this, comma, if this 8, right, is less than what? For example, if the value, let's say this value is 80, if it is less than 80, which is false, right, go ahead and put what? B, comma, if this value, which is 80, right?
Yes.
80, right, is less than what? 70, right?
Yes.
Go ahead and put what? C.
Yes.
So we are checking against many conditions. So this is when we use ifs. I believe that answers your question, right? Right?
Thank you very much.
Does that answer? Does that clarify?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. You're welcome. So any question again, please?
Okay, I have a question.
Okay, what's your next question, please?
Okay, it's concerning the first
Okay.
question that was asked about the student ID, the student's number.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
001. Okay, is there any other way that we can do it that that student number will stick to a particular student, even though when you make an arrangement or the ranking?
How?
Yeah. You just paste it as special. Paste it as special. I want this one to be a challenge for you. If you paste it as special, go out of the table, perform your calculations, right? For example, use them outside the data, perform the calculation, then come back to the cell. Sorry, come back, create a new column, student's ID, paste it as special, and see what will happen. Right?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Kaka, good evening, everyone.
We have like,
please, can I proceed?
We have like 5 minutes. Okay.
Go ahead with your question. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, you can proceed.
Okay. I know that this evening we talked about the formatting and cleaning of data.
Okay.
But there's this challenge I usually have when I'm making an attempt to clean data, especially when I have bulk data sometimes that I try to work with, practice with. Now, when I'm trying to remove duplicates, especially, now there are cases when I'm trying to remove duplicated names in a particular, I have data and then there are names that are duplicated. Of course, I know there's a function up there. Once I highlight, I just click on remove duplicate. Some of them will go out, but I could have a name. Let's say I have Emmanuel Kaka, all right? And in the other cell, I have Kaka Emmanuel. It doesn't really go out. So I have this data still lingered inside the same data set, and then it becomes a challenge. Is there any way someone can really clean the data and ensure that those are not left behind?
I did not get the second part. You said, for example, you have the data and when you go to the data and then click on remove duplicates, select the column, go to the data tab and then click on remove duplicate, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
when I do that, it actually removes duplicate that is exactly the same. Let's say, take for instance, the data set we are using this evening, where we have maybe a name, maybe Emmanuel Kaka, and then we have other numeric values in the other cells. Now, if we have the same Emmanuel Kaka, now this time around is Kaka Emmanuel, with then the others, what's it called? Other cells have the same value as the initial one. Just the only difference is that this one is Emmanuel Kaka, this one is Kaka Emmanuel. The name is somehow inversed in the same worksheet. It doesn't remove the second.
Okay, doesn't remove the second. Okay,
yes.
In that case, see, there's a way you can achieve that, right? So, but since this is outside the context of the class, there's not enough time to exemplify. I'm just going to give you a step, right? For example, if you find yourself in this type of scenario, what you do, right? Do you know that there's a unique function in Excel, right?
Yeah.
Right? So there's a unique function. What we do when we find ourselves in this scenario, there's a unique function. So we use the unique function to remove to select all the unique values before removing the duplicates. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, so make the data unique. Yeah, make the data unique. Once you make the data unique, all duplicates will be dropped, right?
Okay.
So just enter unique and then give the range of your data, and then it's gonna make it unique. It's gonna disregard all the data with the same values, right? Be it name, be it values. It's just gonna disregard the rest of the values. And I don't know if you're familiar with Power Query.
No. I'm just a beginner.
Don't worry. All right,
this is just my
so
usual practical times when I try my hands on it, and I noticed that is actually a big problem for me. That's why I'm bringing it up.
All right, don't worry. When we get to Power Query, we're going to be using DAX, data analysis expression language. So we're going to be doing that hands-on. We're going to be working with millions of rows. We're going to download a data set with millions of rows, and we're going to be using Power Query DAX to remove all the duplicates. And when we get to that part, you'll understand. But before then, go and try and use the unique function to drop all data that are not unique in your data set.
Okay, is there a function called unique function?
There's a function called unique, right? And after using the unique to make your data unique, right? Use to verify that all your data sets are unique. There's another function called count if, which counts the occurrences, right?
Okay.
Yeah, if they are duplicates, it's gonna count them for you. So if it returns 0, then that means your data is unique. And if it returns 1 or any value that is above 1, that means your data set is not unique, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the count if is used like a validation tool after your data set after the duplicates is removed, right? So you count if, for example, like after making your data set unique, in order for you to ensure that your data set is unique, you use the count if and then give it a range, for example, the names column. And if you check, if the value it returns is greater than 1, that means they still duplicate your data. If it returns 0, that means your data is unique. Duplicates are dropped.
Okay. I won't worry about
this. Just go and explore the the unique and the count if. Yeah.
Okay, let's give room to the last question.
So last question, please, because it's 10:30. There's a lot I have to do before I go to bed. So please, drop your question, please, as quickly as possible.
Any last question?
Any last question, please? Be it in the context of this class.
Good evening.
All right, good evening.
No, it's not part of the class. Good
All right.
evening. Okay. I observed during the orientation, there is
Okay.
a ground rule we normally set in that anyone that wants to ask a question should click on the raise hand button so that they can call upon the person to ask a question. Because I observed that when you said, "Is there any questions?" like two persons will automatically answering, which is distracting, and some other persons will not have opportunity to ask a question. So I think that ground rule should be stick so that anybody that wants to
All
ask a
right.
question can raise up his hand. Then that person will be called upon to unmute itself to to ask his questions. So I think
Yeah,
that is the best way to go around.
it's
That's all.
acknowledged. Next time when people want to ask question, you just raise your hand. So the persons will be called in
Yeah,
accordance to
I
when you
believe
raise your
Justice,
hands.
you're in good position to handle that.
Yeah, it's okay. So just to summarize before we end today, please let's take a look how far we have gone from the beginning. We have been able to make meaningful progress for week 1. I want you people to understand that this is not just a training, this is actually a hackathon. And this is not just intended to share knowledge, this is intended to refine individuals' mindset to knowledge and understanding. So please don't sleep over this training. Don't think that you'll be getting it easy. You are not going to be getting it easy. It's just 3 months. Give out all the sacrifices you can make to get the best out of this training. Take note that most of the things we're doing were basics. So especially those who are beginners, in as much as data analytics is concerned, ensure you spend more time for week 1. Because from Sunday, you see from Sunday, we're entering week 2. And you can see it's intermediate. When we get to week 3, it's advanced. So please don't think you are here to sleep. So the 2 times we meet in a week, it doesn't mean it's the only time you open your laptop. So after this session, try to practicalize on your own. Try to have your own project you are working on before you be given the capstone project, which you'll be doing for this. So please continue to follow your guide. And now you guys know what we will be having on Sunday. So you can start looking at all these. You go on your own and work on them. There is a whole lot that you can do with Excel. I think maybe after our training, if I will have some time, I will see I can create time. Like, I don't know if Mohammed included that in his, we will look at that so that you people should also be able to, because Excel has a lot. There is macros in Excel. And
Yeah.
the way people like us who are into programming use macros to do, we can code all these programs he's doing. If I write all of them inside Excel, you will not be able to access any of them. But anytime you open a file, each of those files will be locked with several codes, and you will build formulas that you can use Python and heavy software tools to build in Excel. So Excel
100%.
alone, yeah, Excel alone is very robust and it has a lot to offer. So please, you have the best curriculum that has been designed for you, but don't make it challenging for you. And the way I'm saying this out of experience, the way you can get it challenging is by giving yourself a little break. So giving more effort, and do research before coming to class. Like now, you know, so before you come, you even know what you're expecting to get from your trainer.
Yeah.
Then that is when training is effective. But if you are coming to come and hear in class, you won't get it. So you should even know some of these formulas down on your own and jot them down from your research. Then when you come, the trainer is doing it, you are practicing. Then when you ask questions, the questions will have meaning. They won't just make sense. They will have meaning. Learning is effective when there is meaning, not when there is sense. When there is sense, you can only just say, wow, wow, wow. But what's the feedback in terms of you assimilating? So best of luck.
Your mic is Justice. Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted. I believe you mistakenly, yeah, you mistakenly pressed was it music or something like that? Justice, I don't know if you can hear me, but your mic is muted.
Apologies, please. I had a call that came in and it was urgent. So please, like I've said, this program is going to be intensive. So when you are coming to class, don't just come into class to us to be enticed. Come into class ready to assimilate. So before you are coming on Sunday, please ensure you go through each of these things that are itemized for class 3. Class 3, you are talking of VLOOK up, or you can see them on that. You got, all of you guys have this. So work on it. Then you already know, if you are done with that, before you come, you will not just be amazed during class sessions, but you will actually get the best, so that your trainer too will admire this session. And let's keep on the spirit. And in 3 months' time, we'll all have good stories to tell. So MK, excellent job, and thanks to every one of us all for being an excellent MVP. And I'm sure that with time, the posterity will speak well from this training. So best of luck and see you all on Sunday.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you very much, sir. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Have a nice rest.
Good night. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.